Welcome to our playoff edition of the Lifelong Rivals Sports Podcast. I'm Zach Kaufman here with Ryan D'Amico.
We still have NFL football to talk about. So with that, I'll pass it over to Zach, and he will, like always, spearhead our NFL coverage and talk about Wild Card Weekend.
Yep, we definitely had our start to the NFL playoffs here, and we have some exciting things to get into. The first game, I know we talked about it pre-show. This is the only game I did not get to watch myself. I had a trip with some friends. We had a good time up in Pennsylvania. It was a lot of snow there compared to what we've had here in Virginia, but definitely a fun time there. I was on my way home while this game was happening, so didn't get to see it myself. Didn't get to watch the Chiefs meltdown on my own, but they got out to a 21-3 lead in this game. They had an early touchdown from Kareem Hunt. They had an early touchdown from Travis Kelce, and then an Alex Smith touchdown to Demarcus Robinson for their first three scores. And incredibly, that was in the second quarter. That was the end of their scoring. So the Titans were able to come back, starting with a crazy, crazy play that I had to watch this over and over again. But Marcus Mariota's touchdown pass to himself. So threw the ball, got deflected by a defender, caught it himself, ran it into the end zone. One of the weirder touchdowns I've witnessed in my life here. Made me think of, I had to look up highlights of it, but Brett Favre's first ever completion was to himself. Didn't turn into a touchdown, but that was against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Same thing, threw the pass, got deflected. His was like a 7-yard loss, where Mariota was able to turn it into a touchdown. After that, they got a 35-yard touchdown from Derrick Henry, and then what put them ahead for good was Mariota throwing another touchdown pass, not to himself this time, but to Eric Decker, the former Jet, from 22 yards out to give him that 1-point lead with just about 6 minutes left, and they were able to hang on to it from that point. So really tough. Both of us expected the Chiefs to win. A lot of people expected the Chiefs to win. They had a down point in the season. They made a good comeback towards the end. It seemed like they were going into the playoffs exactly how they should be, on a high note. And then to have them fall apart and lose to what's been a disappointing Titans team throughout the season. They finished 9-7. They seemed very mediocre throughout the season. But this Chiefs team with an 18-point lead to just completely blow it. Disappointing start for them to this playoffs here.
Yeah, Zach, look, a couple things stood out to me that I wanted to touch on with this game. One, there's been two recent games where a team has blown an 18-point lead or higher in the playoffs, both of which are the Chiefs and both of which are Andy Reid. And it makes you wonder, Andy Reid's a good coach. Andy Reid's a respected coach. Andy Reid is that coach that, look, he's going to make your team better than it was before he got there kind of coach. But I'm sorry. And I saw it firsthand in Philadelphia. I saw it for 15 years. He's just not the coach that's going to get you over the hump. He's just not. I mean, this is the second time that his team has blown an 18-point lead, this time at home, against a Tennessee team that a lot of people, you and me included, thought didn't belong in the playoffs at all. And we're trending downhill and backing into the playoffs. And this is an Andy Reid coach who had the NFL's leading rusher in Kareem Hunt. He got the ball 11 times.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a problem. Like, that is a problem. And I saw it in Philly all the time. My friends and I joke about it. We can joke about it now. When it happened, it pissed me off something fierce. But, I mean, this is what he does. He'll go into a game where the the opposing defense is 29th against the run and throw it 45 times. Like, what sense does that make? This is who Andy Reid is. This is what he does. And I'm going to be honest with you, Zach. If I am the Chiefs higher up, I'm considering moving on from Andy Reid. I know that's not popular. I know Reid's like that, he's that, like, good T-shirt. Like, I have one. Like a nice, comfy T-shirt. It's raggedy. It's got a hole in it. Like, but it fits you like a glove. You don't want to throw it away because it's so comfortable. It's so comfy. But at the end of the day, you probably should get rid of it. And that's what I look at Andy Reid as. They need to move on. To blow 2 18-point playoff game leads in the span of 4 years, that's a problem. That's a big problem. And personally, I'd move on from Andy Reid. I know they won't. I know they're because they want to see what he does with the kid Mahomes that they drafted last year. But look, Zach, that's a problem. What's your thoughts on Reid?
That's what I felt like was their problem during the season when they had their drop off, that they stopped giving Kareem Hunt the ball. That he was such a big piece for him, and they just weren't giving as many carries, as many touches. And that's, like you said, that's exactly what happened in this game. It is a trend we've seen from Andy Reid. I did not watch him nearly as much as you as an Eagles fan, but I did see him. I did watch him a lot, especially growing up when he was there in Philly. And it has been a trend his entire career of getting away from the running game, no matter how good it is, no matter how bad the opposing defense is at stopping the run. It's just it's what he does. It's kind of what you accept when you have Andy Reid as your coach. And I don't know why the Chiefs would expect anything different. He is a great coach. I have a huge respect for him. He puts out winning season after winning season everywhere he's been. There's an incredible line of coaches that have come from his coaching staff and are now head coaches throughout the year.
Right.
Huge respect for him as a coach, but this is what prevents him from getting further than what he's made it. That they kind of drop off what they've done to get him to this point and move away from the running game. And it did hurt him that they lost Travis Kelce earlier in this game.
Right.
He's been one of their most relied on pieces for years now. And that does hurt. But that's not the only thing that's going to lead them to a 0-point second half there, blowing that 18-point lead. I think they'll come back better next year. They'll have Eric Berry, one of the best secondary players in the NFL, who was injured. I think it was week 1 or week 2. So they will have him back. They could move on from Alex Smith, like you mentioned, to Pat Mahomes. But this is a team, I feel like, with Andy Reid as coach, they'll always be in it. It's just it's going to take something different from what he's been doing to get him to that next level.
If you were the GM of the Kansas City Chiefs, is he your head coach next year?
Yes.
Okay.
I don't think there's someone out there that I feel like can definitely be better than him.
I agree, and it's a tough thing because Reid's such a quarterback-friendly coach, and you have that young guy in Mahomes. But I think it'd be nice for them to bring in a young coach, an offensive-minded coach that can work with Mahomes, and that you kind of build this thing together. You know, you see it a lot with a new coach, and they draft a quarterback, and they kind of build it together. You're going to see it with the Bears now, with Nagy, offensive-minded coach with a young quarterback now. They can build together for hopefully the ideal scenario is 15 years. I mean, that's ideal. I mean, so that's the direction I would go, but I could definitely see him bringing them back. And you're right. The Kelce thing, I had that written down here. That was, I mean, he was dominating in the first quarter up until he got hurt, really. I mean, he was dominating, had a touchdown catch. So that was huge. And then the officiating in this game, Zach, was really, I know you didn't see it. I saw bits and pieces, but it was a big topic for discussion. The head ref, Jeff Triplett, actually retired after this game because of a lot of the ridicule and the performance that him and his crew did. In particular, there was a play that was kind of a turning point in the game, which Mariota sacked and fumbles. They rule him. They don't rule him down. They don't rule him down by contact. They rule that his forward progress had stopped when he was just standing in the pocket, which was an awful call for one, which was a call that I can't ever remember. I can't ever remember hearing that. They didn't even, and you can't review that because you can't review forward progress being stopped and if it was a fumble or not. So, and Kansas City recovered that ball, and who knows where the game could have went. So, everything that could have went wrong for the Chiefs in that game in the second half did go wrong. And in turn, they're at home, and now Tennessee has the privilege and the honor now to go up to New England and take on the number one seeded Patriots. I'm sure they're looking forward to that.
I mean, I'm sure they'd rather have that than being at home like the Chiefs, but
good point.
Not an ideal matchup for them. I could see with the Patriots coming off a bye week that the Titans get an early touchdown or something like that, give themselves hope. But
do you remember a couple years? Remember a couple years ago, the same situation happened with Baltimore. They won their first game, went up to New England, jumped up 14-0 on New England in the divisional round. New England came back, scored 14 straight points, and then eventually went on and won. But I mean, that's kind of one thing you worry about. You wonder about taking a team lightly, coming off that bye week, a little stagnant. You know, Tennessee's feeling themselves a little bit right now, but obviously everyone thinks they're in for a reality check. So we'll obviously see what happens Saturday night up there in Foxborough.
Yeah, definitely. And one other thing I forgot to mention earlier, but Derrick Henry had a monster game. That was the biggest stats of the day for either of these two teams. 156 yards on the ground and a touchdown. And his long was only that 35-yard touchdown. A lot of times you see a stat line like that and maybe had an 80-yard touchdown, 75-yard touchdown. But he didn't have any kind of excessive runs like that and averaged almost 7 yards per carry without DeMarco Murray there to take any carries away from him. So it'd be interesting to see how he continues to progress going into next year and the future beyond that. From there, we'll go to the next game, which was Atlanta Falcons versus the LA Rams. And this is one of the games we differed on who we thought was gonna win. The Falcons, they had some struggles moving the ball early on, kicked a couple field goals there in the first quarter. They ended up getting up 13-0 on a Devonta Freeman touchdown run there. The Rams were kind of hanging around, but really hurt themselves early on with some special teams turnovers. Pharaoh Cooper, their Pro Bowl kick returner, had 2 fumbles there recovered by Atlanta that really put them back. And they were able to still hang into this game. In the third quarter, they were still down 16-10 before Atlanta kicked another field goal. They had 4 field goals on the day. This Atlanta team, that's becoming a trend. That's how they finished out the season, kicking a lot of field goals, just their offense stalling out. Their passing offense just being kind of all right. Matt Ryan had 218 yards. That's fine. It's nothing that stands out. The running game was fine. Freeman averaged just below 4 yards per carry. Tevin Coleman was under 3 yards per carry. Julio Jones was a standout player for them with 94 yards on 9 catches and scored a touchdown there. But it was just too much for the Rams there after those turnovers. They weren't able to get the whole way back in it. They pulled it within a 6-point game in the fourth quarter, 19-13, before the Falcons went up there towards the end with another touchdown, that Julio Jones touchdown that I mentioned with his stats, to finally win the game 26-13. So even though the Falcons won it and the score looked convincing, that was not the story I got out of this. With some of those turnovers with the Rams, the Falcons not able to finish repeatedly throughout the game, having to settle for field goals. So they do advance, but it was not pretty at all.
Yes, you took the words right out of my mouth right there, man. I thought for sure the fact that they couldn't finish drives and kept settling for field goals, I thought that was going to come back and bite them. I really thought that was going to come back and hurt this team. And eventually the number one scoring team in the league, the Rams, who averaged 30 points per game this year, was eventually going to get things going and kind of get things on the right track. But a couple things. Look, as you see, look, we talk about it all the time in the regular season. It's even more so magnified in the playoffs. But turnovers, look, Rams had 2 turnovers. You touched on it briefly. They had 2 turnovers in the game. Atlanta had none. And at the end of the day, that's probably the turning point. You and I talked about it again before we went on the air, was I made the point that, and you just alluded to it, that this game wasn't – I thought the game was closer than the kind of score indicated. It was right there, but the turnovers were just kind of the reason why it got as separated as it did. 2 things that I didn't like that the Rams did that I thought could have been the difference in the game. One, I thought they got away from Todd Gurley way too quickly. I know they were down. I know the whole thing is you're down, so you got to throw the ball. Bullshit. Todd Gurley had 14 carries for 101 yards. Okay. Yeah. I don't know who was, obviously, McVay's the one calling the plays, but you got to see that and realize, look, we got to feed this guy the ball. He's a potential MVP candidate. I mean, you got to give him the ball. And then it gets back to before the half, they looked to be – they were knocking on the door, looked to be able to take a 14-13 lead going into the half. All of a sudden, momentum will be snatched from Atlanta. You're, after such a porous first half, you're able to still go into the half with a lead at 14-13. They have the ball on like the 2 or 3 yard line. They throw a pass for whatever reason. They get a holding call. It gets bumped back to the 13 or 14 yard line. In turn, they have to settle for a field goal, and they can't take advantage of that situation. They don't give the ball to Gurley. I mean, we saw it with the Cowboys on Christmas Eve with them against Seattle. You're on the doorstep. You give the ball to Ezekiel Elliott 3 straight times, 4 if necessary. The Rams, you give the ball to Gurley 3 straight times. So many times where these coaches outthink themselves, it makes me sick. Like, it really makes me sick. I know it's hard to do. I know it's easier to say when we're just sitting here as a couple shock jocks talking about, football. But I thought those were the situations in that game that really stuck out to me that was the difference in the game.
And this is a young Rams team. They have a young coach with Sean McVay. He's only 31, and I think this is going to be good for him. They're going to learn from this. He's going to come back a better play caller. He's going to understand the situation better, and be more prone to make better decisions throughout the game. As the example of the situation you just gave around the goal line, feeding their most dominant player throughout the season, who had another great efficient game here. He had 14 carries, 101 yards, averaged over 7 yards per carry. It's just some monster stats. They also, I didn't mention it before when I went through kind of the overview of the game, but Robert Woods had a huge day, 9 catches, 142 yards. And then Cooper Kupp's just been so solid. I'd say more so the second half of the season he's really come on. But 8 catches, 69 yards, and scored a touchdown. He's been very steady right around that like 60 to 75 yards, a touchdown pretty much every other game, it seemed like, towards the finish of the year. He gets another touchdown in this game. And then Sammy Watkins, it'll be interesting to see what happens with him. He only had 1 catch for 23 yards. He's going to be a free agent. He's someone they traded for this offseason. So we'll see if I wouldn't be surprised if a team like the Browns, like a team that's just had some questionable management, goes out and overpays him and he just doesn't do much. But it'll be interesting to see what happens with him. A former, I believe, top 5 pick, definitely top 10 pick. He was of the Bills. So that'll be intriguing to see what ends up happening with him moving forward.
Yeah, that's the getting back to the Rams. That's basically, what it boils down to too. I just think at the end of the day, they were too young. They were too inexperienced. And this will help them, obviously. I mean, you're in agreement that, this is a team that'll probably be around for a while. I mean, we talked about we talked about in the previous weeks that we thought this is now kind of starting to become their division. Goff's only going to be able to take another step forward. You would think
it's a very young team.
Right. I mean, they're very young. So, they're built for longevity and they're built to be around for some time. And this will only help them. You're kidding yourself if you thought that the Rams were going to go to the Super Bowl and win the Super Bowl. At no point did I think that was going to happen. I just thought they were too young. I really just thought they were too young. And so many times, and I think the same thing with the Eagles even. Like, even if Carson Wentz stayed healthy, you see it so often where these teams – you have to, like, pay your dues, so to speak, in the playoffs in, like, a year or two before until you finally, like, get over that hump and win a championship. And I think that's kind of what they're in the process of doing. They'll be around and have a chance to win a championship in the years to come, I would believe.
Yeah, I think the only thing that's going to throw them off is any kind of Todd Gurley injury. That would really hurt this team. But like you said, a lot of young players, especially at some of those important positions, quarterback, running back, receiver, throughout the roster. It's very young team. And coach, like we said before there, he's younger than quite a good amount of players still playing right now.
Yeah.
So from there, we'll go to the most boring game of the weekend. We got Buffalo versus Jacksonville.
Ugh.
And
how much of this game did you actually watch?
I had the game on the TV for the entire
That's how
game.
I was. Yep. That's how I was.
There was a good portion, especially early on, and then that fourth quarter that I was just kind of like in and out doing some other stuff while I was watching. It just like was not very engaging. First quarter went by, 0 scores there. There were 3 field goals in the two field goals in the second quarter. And then finally, Jacksonville scored a touchdown towards the end of the third quarter, a 1-yard touchdown. So we've got basically 0 offensive highlights from this game. I was impressed with both defenses. I know we talked about that a little bit before the show. Both sides of the ball, or both teams, that side of the ball, very, very dominant. Unfortunately, it made for a pretty rough game to watch. LaShawn McCoy, huge shout out to him, led the Bills in rushing and receiving, even though it wasn't even known if he was going to play for most of the week, dealing with an injury, able to play, able to lead them in everything, just like he's done throughout this season. On the other side of the ball, Blake Bortles, 87 yards passing, 88 yards rushing. Not really.
That's what you hear when you think Blake Bortles on Sunday afternoon.
Man, we talked about him a couple of weeks ago when he was on a hot streak. He was doing well, and this was just a mess. He was not good. He did make some key like first down runs a couple of times, which contributed to that 88 yards rushing, but the passing was just miserable. Completed 52% of his passes, which was the highest of the 3 quarterbacks that played in this game, with Tyrod Taylor completing 45%, and then Nathan Peterson with his 33% completion at the end. Just not a whole lot statistic-wise to talk about in this game. Ben Koyak was the only one who scored the touchdown.
Yeah.
Really don't know anything about him. Don't really have anything further to go here except for finishing off. Unfortunately, what looked like a concussion there for Tyrod Taylor, getting slammed to the turf. His head hit the ground pretty hard. And Nathan Peterman came in, threw 3 passes, one of them an interception. An incredible play there by Jalen Ramsey to finish off the game. The Bills still did have some hope there towards the end, but just an ugly game overall, even though it was close.
Yeah, this was such a bad game. Like, I was dreading coming on here and talking about this game. It was just like, I'm to the point where I just want to touch on the basic points and then move on to a great game in New Orleans and Carolina. And I was the same boat as you. I had it on. I was doing some other things around the house and and whatnot. But I had it on. I was paying attention, kind of on and off. But you didn't miss much. I mean, we waited 17 years for the Bills to get to the playoffs. Whoop-de-doo. Boy, they really showed up. I mean, and it goes to show you. I mean, how bad the AFC was this year. Yeah. I mean, that this was the 6th seed that got in. I mean, it was pretty clear they didn't belong. I mean, they did not belong. And yes, their defense played well. They stopped the run, which is what they probably set out to do. Stop Fournette, let's load the box, try to have Bortles beat us. He didn't beat him with his arm, but at times he did beat him with his legs, and that was the kind of the turning point in the game was Bortles running the football. Like you said, had more rushing yards than passing yards, and that was the difference. They couldn't get stops with Blake Bortles, running the ball on third down, keeping drives alive, and then ultimately on fourth down, he throws a touchdown pass. That's the game winner. Last thing I'm going to say, I feel so bad for Shady McCoy. That he's one of the best players in the NFL and in recent memory that I can think of that has yet to win a playoff game. He's been in 4 playoff games, I believe, now, and has lost every single one of them. And it's a shame. You feel for the guy because he's such a special player and such a special talent. And where things could have been had that dope of a fucking moron, Chip Kelly, not have traded him away for Kiko Alonso when he was in Philly. We'll never forget where I was that day and what I was doing and how I thought it was a gag when I found out. But I feel for him. And there was a video of him walking into the locker room. He was cussing. He was obviously visibly upset, threw his helmet, was, kind of talking to himself. And obviously because he was pissed off as he was going in the locker room. And you just feel for him. It's unfortunate. And unfortunately it happens. I mean, we see it with a lot of guys, a lot of all-time greats that have never been able to win a championship. And look, he's starting to fall into that category because, I mean, if he continues to play the way he's playing, he's probably going to be a Hall of Famer. It's just unfortunate that he hasn't got over the hump and even won a playoff game, let alone a championship.
I always think of when I think of Shady McCoy, our friend Chaz Alexi played for Pittsburgh Panthers. And McCoy was one of his teammates at one point, and I remember I was with a group of friends. It might have been you that asked the question. It might have been me. I don't really remember. But someone asked him who the best player he ever played against was. And because we were still in college, Chaz was still in college at this time, but he'd played D1 teams, top teams from around the country, and his answer was his former teammate, LaShawn McCoy. Like, no question, no hesitation about it. And that just stood out to me. Like, out of all the guys he went up against, it was his own teammate that he had to practice against early in his career that stood out as the best player he'd ever played against. And he has been a great player throughout his career. It's tough to see him almost wasting his time here on this Bills team, although he was the main reason they were in it to be able to make the playoffs here. That on his back, his contributions in both the running game and the receiving game have been incredible his entire career, and once again this year. So hopefully he doesn't go the route of a Matt Forte, who was incredible and now is just kind of wasting his time away there on the Jets. So not sure what exactly his future will look like, but huge respect for him as a player.
Absolutely. 100%.
We'll go to our final game from there, which was Carolina and New Orleans. This was the game I was looking forward to the most here. And it turned out to be a good game, a high-scoring game, the most high-scoring game of the weekend. And started out very quickly with an 80-yard touchdown pass, Drew Brees to Ted Ginn Jr. against his former Carolina Panthers team. So fun way to kick off the scoring there. Carolina came back with a field goal. New Orleans kind of held on to the lead while the Panthers kept kicking field goals throughout the first half. Finished the half 21-9. Again, another field goal by Carolina to start the third quarter, followed by a Saints field goal. And then we finally got some more scoring here towards the end of the game. Cam Newton threw a touchdown pass to Greg Olsen, the tight end, to make it 24-19. Alvin Kamara came back down and got a touchdown for him to put the Saints up by 12. And then to make it close there at the finish, we had a monster play with Cam Newton passing to Christian McCaffrey. He took it down the field, across the field, for a 56-yard touchdown there. That was a fantastic play to make it 31-26. We had some back and forth towards the end, but still it ended up with that 31-26 final score there. We had 349 yards passing from Cam Newton, 376 from Drew Brees, both threw for 2 touchdowns. I was very impressed when it came to the Panthers on how much they were able to hold back what's been a dominant New Orleans running game throughout the season. They held both Alvin Kamara and Mark Ingram to under 25 yards and under 2.5 yards per carry. So their defense did well. Carolina had 2 guys over 100 yards receiving, as well as New Orleans with Greg Olsen, Christian McCaffrey for Carolina, Michael Thomas and Ted Ginn Jr. there for New Orleans. But the story for this Panthers team throughout the season is they can't get much of anything going on the ground there besides some runs from Cam Newton. Jonathan Stewart had 51 yards. It was all right, but they need more than that to really be able to win against some of these good teams.
Yeah, a few things from this game. One, I've been a big hater, heckler, or whatever word you want to kind of throw out there about Cam Newton. Cam Newton was not the reason they lost this game. I thought Cam Newton was fantastic in this game. And you don't hear me saying that often. So when I say it, I mean it, and he played a really good game. I thought Cam Newton played one of his best games I've seen him play in a very long time. I mean, a very long time. The stats, 349 yards, 2 touchdowns. It's pretty good. A lot of missed opportunities, though, out there. In the first quarter, receiver for the Panthers, I forget his name. It was a 3rd down inside the 10-yard line, and Cam throws an absolute dime right inside the pylon going out of bounds, and it just kind of goes right through his arms, and he drops a would-be touchdown.
I believe that was Kalen Clay on that play. I remember exactly what you were talking about. Perfectly. Could not have thrown it any better at all.
No, not at all. I'm pretty sure it was Keenan Clay, and you're definitely right about that. And it's just, it gets back to missed opportunities and turnovers and that kind of stuff in playoff games. In the playoffs, you have to make those plays, especially on the road. But at the same time, I get back to, them trading away Kelvin Benjamin and wouldn't they have liked to have him in this game? Instead of throwing to Keenan Clay, you're throwing into maybe Devin Funchess in that situation, because Benjamin's your 1 now. Funchess is in that situation. You'd much rather throw the Funchess than Keenan Clay. So you have to worry about that. But the difference, Zach, in this game, at the end of the day, was the Panthers not being able to capitalize deep in Saints territory. They got inside the 25-yard line, Zach, 4 times. 4 times they came away with field goals. Sorry, you're not winning the playoffs like that. You're just not, especially on the road, and especially in the Superdome against Drew Brees. It's just not happening. You get 1 touchdown there, instead of a field goal. You're sitting pretty, and maybe you win the game. But to kick 4 field goals after getting inside the 25-yard line 4 times, that's a problem. Brees, look, Drew Brees does what Drew Brees does, especially at home. In the playoffs at home, he's lights out. He's a problem. He is. He's gonna win way more than he loses, and he showed that on Sunday. And real quickly, I wanted to talk about that 4th down play that the Saints ended up going. It was 4th and 2 at midfield with very, very limited time on the clock. And they decided to go for it instead of punting it away to Carolina. Brees gets flushed, rolled out, and throws an interception to Carolina, which the defensive back, in hindsight, should have dropped the ball instead of catching it at the 30-yard line and instead of sending them back 20 more yards. What's your thoughts on the call there, going for it? I personally like it. You get them, you pick it up, the game's pretty much over. And what's your thought on the defensive back making the play there, because it was obviously a bonehead play. Someone that's just not – his mind's not in the game.
I am always in support of bold plays like that. I love seeing it. It's more fun to watch. I know the feeling as a coach when you're taking a risk, how that is. And it's just exciting to see people try to pull it off, and when they can effectively, it's great to see. So I did like the move there. The defensive back, that's something that I feel like elementary kids know that. Like, they can understand what to do in that situation where, okay, you catch it, it's down there. He was right along the sideline too. Like, he just knocks the ball out of bounds. There's no chance of it being caught. There's no chance of some kind of weird anything happening where we've seen the ball get caught before in the end zone where people try and bat it down. But right there at the sideline, it's easy to knock it out and make that smart play. So it's hard to say what he was thinking in that situation, besides trying to stack his own stats or just being unaware that it was a fourth down, that he should have just knocked it down, knocked it out of bounds, not caught it, and they've got much better field position.
Yeah, I was telling you earlier that I was told at a very young age when I played baseball, I believe it was from my dad or from one of my coaches when I was very young, that they told me before each batter comes up, access like the situation. If the ball's hit to you, where are you going to go with it? And I would ask myself that before every batter. That way I knew when the time came, I didn't have to think about it. I knew what I was going to do. I knew the situation, and I could handle my business. And that was very valuable to me. And I think, and I've talked about it for a long time, and I'll continue to talk about it until these kids wisen up and stop making these bad decisions. That these kids have all the talent in the world, but they don't have the football IQ or the baseball IQ or the basketball IQ or whatever, the sports IQ. They don't have it. And that's a prime example of a kid that wanted to make the interception, wanted to have the spotlight on him, probably thought, I'm going to catch this and take it to the house. No, you're not. You had three guys around you. Like, just knock it down and give Cam Newton, who was playing fantastic, and the offense who had a lot of momentum, give him a chance to go down and win the game. Didn't happen. Like you said, New Orleans gets the victory, and they set up a very interesting matchup next week with Minnesota.
Couple more things I just wanted to mention very quickly. First, on the Panthers side of the ball, huge respect to Julius Peppers, former number 2 overall pick in 2002, before we were even in high school.
That's unreal.
He was picked. He's still playing at age 37. He's still starting. He's still making plays.
Yep.
Monster respect there.
Captain,
just finished his 16th year in the NFL.
That's unreal. That's unbelievable.
It is. I remember like Madden 2K from when I was in high school. He was one of those guys, 99 every single year. Like, he was just such a dominant player there coming off the edge. Very fun video game player to play with. And then two other things I want to bring up real quick. Well, they pretty much one thing, but two different players. I'm always impressed how the Saints can be effective with little-known, lesser-used players. They got a touchdown in this game from Zack and Ryan. They seem like it every year, where they have some type of fullback, some
tight end
like that. A tight end. Because the other one I was going to mention was tight end Josh Hill. Came up with he only had 3 catches, but I know one was a key first down towards the end of the game. He had another one on one of their scoring drives. He just seemed to be open when they really needed it. And it's funny too, because they signed Kobe Fleener to kind of be that guy, to be their tight end, and he really disappointed, and they've been able to have Josh Hill step up. I was trying to think, I know for the last couple of years they had a fullback that they got from the Packers that would always be
John
that
Kuhn.
kind of guy. Yes. He was there.
He's from he's a local guy. He's actually from the area.
I didn't even realize that.
He went to, I want to say he went to Ship, to be honest with you. I want to say he went to Shippensburg. Maybe, he went to Ship. He went to Shippensburg. Yep. Yep, graduated 2004.
Yeah, didn't remember that at all. But yeah, because I know he had some decent years with the Packers, and then came to the Saints, and he was just that kind of guy that like every now and then he'd have a short touchdown, just like Zach Line had in this game, or I'm pretty sure he had a couple of games where he had two, maybe even a 3 touchdown game where he was just kind of that short yardage guy. Every now and then he'd just get a score for him, short catch, short important catch. They just always seem to find a way to use whatever's available to them, and I love that about the Saints.
To add on to that, this was the first year Drew Brees has ever had a Pro Bowl wide receiver. He had Jimmy Graham there for a little while, who obviously made the Pro Bowl, was a playmaker for him. But this was the first year Michael Thomas made the Pro Bowl this year. First year he's ever had a Pro Bowl wide receiver. That's phenomenal, what he's doing.
Man, he had some solid receivers. Immediately, I think of Marquise Colston, who was there for a long time. But yeah, he was more of a high catch kind of guy. He was always right around 1,000 yards. Like he didn't put
Lance Moore. Who else did they have?
Willie Snead's been good the last couple of years. They haven't really used him this year. Brandon Cooks was there.
Yep.
Yeah, those are. I'm sure there's another one or two we're missing that were there, but yeah, those were definitely some of the high end guys there. But interesting that none of them ever made a Pro Bowl during that time. So we'll go, since that's the end of. Do you have any other comments from the games that just happened?
No, I do not. I do not. Pretty self-explanatory. So just want to make it known that in our pick'em pool, I went 3-1. Zach went 2-2. The difference was that Atlanta game. And then as we go through the 4 divisional round matchups, each one of us will give a pick, and we'll document that and see what happens going forward.
Yep, so we're back at it again. I got to make a little comeback here, being a game behind. Neither of us got that Titans upset of the Chiefs there. So the first game we'll get to talking about, I know we mentioned a little bit early on in our episode, but New England against the Tennessee Titans. And I don't feel good about Tennessee's chances. I think Tennessee's best hope is to get a score early, feel good about having a lead, and then it's not going to go well for them. The Patriots defense has been suspect all year from the first game when Kareem Hunt torched them. So I think the Titans could do some things. It might be a higher scoring game, but I don't see them hanging into this game long term here at all. I think it's about like 17-point win by the Patriots. But I wouldn't be surprised if it's tied or a 3-point game at halftime.
Okay. All right. Going out on a little limb there. I could see that. I could definitely see that. I mean, I think it's pretty simple for Tennessee. I think you have to come into this game. You have your running back, Derrick Henry. And, oh, by the way, DeMarco Murray might play in this game. That's still to be seen, but there's a possibility he might play. So you might have that 1-2 punch that you had and have had success with all year back in the fold. But even if he doesn't play, I think you have to come to this game and you have to pound it with Derrick Henry, who had a great game Saturday night or Saturday evening into night against Kansas City. And you need to do the same thing on the road in Foxborough. In turn, it keeps Brady and that offense off the field and shortens the game. You need to win time of possession, and you need to keep them off the field. The Patriots defense, we've talked about it all year. Yes, they've gotten better over the course of the season, but this is still a rushing defense that ranks 20th in the league against the run. They give up 4.7 yards per carry on the season. They give up just shy of 115 yards per game on the ground. So I think you need to just pound it. Take your shots when they're there, with Delaney Walker down the seam in particular. He's kind of a mismatch problem. And go that direction. Because, look, I mean, you give the ball to Brady at will, at home, in the playoffs, he's going to pick you apart. I mean, and you saw it in the first half of that Chiefs game, and then they kind of got away from what was working for them, and it fell apart. New England ain't going to make that mistake. I mean, Bill Belichick's not going to all of a sudden forget how to coach and go away with what's working. So, Zach, if it's me, that's the direction and the game plan that I have. It's go in there, run the ball. It's going to be cold up there in New England, obviously, and just pound the ball as many times as you can until you get to that point, if it happens, where you have to throw the ball. It's the biggest spread of the weekend. It's currently at 13.5. New England obviously favored by 13.5, and I think it's going to be right around the number. I think it's going to be right. I don't think they're going to win by like 21, 24. I don't think that's going to happen. I think it's going to be right around that number, around, maybe 14, 17 points, somewhere in there. And I think I agree with you. I think it's close early, and they pull away late after they shake some of the rust off.
Yeah, I could see it being right around there. I agree with you. I don't think it's going to be a monster blowout, especially the Patriots coming off that bye week. A lot of times teams come out down a little bit when we see that happen, but I don't think they'll have a problem at all in this game. So the next one we'll go to is Jacksonville-Pittsburgh. If you asked me about this game before I just watched Jacksonville play, I would have been so excited. I would have felt like, oh man, this is going to be one of the matchups of the playoffs. Right now, I just do not feel good about this Jacksonville team. I think Steelers' defense has been all right throughout this season, but I don't see the Jaguars' offense suddenly transforming here because they're playing the Steelers. Now, earlier in the season, Jacksonville was able to handle the Steelers. Steelers being at home for that game, it was 30-9. Can they do it? Can they do it twice? That was very reliant on Ben Roethlisberger throwing a huge amount of, I believe it was 5 interceptions he threw that game. I don't have it here in front of me.
It was 5
at the moment. But yeah, 5 interceptions he threw in that game. I don't see that happening again. This is in Pittsburgh. I see Pittsburgh winning probably by right around a touchdown. I think Jacksonville is still going to hang into it, hang into the game, and be there throughout it. Keep it close. With, like I said, talking about their game against Buffalo, their defense is quality. I think they'll hold the Steelers down a little bit. I'd be amazed if they score less than this past game when they only put up 10 points. I think their offense has to be able to do better than that. Blake Bortles, he's had some good games. I think he's got to throw more than 87 yards. They've got to do better than that. But I still see Pittsburgh definitely pulling this one out.
Yeah, look, I agree. And Vegas agrees with you, Zach. You say it's right around a touchdown game. Line's 7.5 in favor of the hometown Steelers. And, everyone's going to kind of think back to, earlier in the year, Jacksonville goes into Pittsburgh and beats them soundly, and Ben throws 5 interceptions. Fournette has a 90-yard touchdown run at the end to really salt the game away. But I just don't see it. I don't see it happening again. I think that was one of them fluke games. After it, Ben's talking about, oh, maybe I don't have it anymore. Everyone's talking about retirement. And I just think it was one of them fluke games. Every team kind of has it throughout the year, the good teams anyway. You have one of them kind of throwaway games. You just say you have them. It happens in the NFL. There's a lot of parity, and it happens. I think what you're going to see is I have the feeling this is going to be a Le'Veon Bell game. I think it's going to be a game where they pound the ball with him against a Jacksonville defense where they make their hay against the pass. Their pass defense is second in the league. They're second in the league in points allowed. That's where they make their hay, is against the pass. With Aboye and Ramsey on the outside and that front four with Calais Campbell and those guys getting after it. Rush defense is a different story, though, for Jacksonville. We talked about New England last game being 20th against the run. Jacksonville's 21st against the run. So, if they were smart, if it was me, that's how I would attack things. You have probably the best running back in football, one of the best running backs in football. I would go right at him, and I would pound it with that offensive line. They got a good offensive line, and I would pound it. Yeah, you got Brown back, but I would pound it and then take your shots when they're there and if they're there against that defense. But it's funny the way you led that off was you probably feel a little more comfortable had you not seen the game against the Bills.
Yeah.
Had you seen Blake Bortles have a little bit of a pulse? Because that was the question, wasn't it, Zach? Were you going to get good Bortles or were you going to get bad Bortles going into the playoffs? And you got more bad Bortles than you got good Bortles, but they were lucky they're playing the Bills. I mean, they're playing anyone else that game, they lose. I mean, they're done. And that's not even close. They probably lose it by double digits. Yeah, definitely like Pittsburgh. You like Pittsburgh as well, right?
Yep. Yeah, we're in agreement on that one. Next game, I don't know if we will be in agreement, but Atlanta going to Philly to play the Eagles. And this is a game I think will be one of the closer ones of the weekend. We talked about with the past week of how Atlanta really struggled to finish. They ended up kicking a lot of field goals. Even though they were able to win against the Rams, it was kind of closer than what it should have been with some of the Rams turnovers. It really is going to be interesting to see what Nick Foles can do. He is going to kill this Eagles team if he comes out turning over the ball. Any kind of fumbles, interceptions, that's really going to hurt against an Atlanta team that's solid but not outstanding in any way. I think the Eagles definitely do have a chance, even with Foles at quarterback. I think they have a good chance, but I'm still going with the Falcons for this game. I think it's going to be a little too much to handle there for the Eagles. If Wentz was there, no question, I would have the Eagles 100% every single time. I'm not that excited about this Falcons team, but I think the Falcons do win this game. I think it's going to be a field goal towards the end of the game that puts them ahead. I don't think it's going to be any kind of double-digit win like they just had against the Rams unless we have a Nick Foles meltdown.
Yeah, this is interesting. We were talking, obviously, before the show and previously about how I haven't seen anybody pick the Eagles. I haven't seen anyone. I have not seen anyone come out and say they like the Eagles to win this game. And you know what? I love it. I love that. When you have a team that is this heavily magnified and picked in the national spotlight, a lot of times it doesn't work out. So I, as an Eagles fan, I absolutely love it. I think it's fantastic. And I'm going to come out and I'm going to pick the Eagles. I think they find a way to win this game. What happens later on in the championship game and so on, we'll cross that bridge if and when we get there, like I told you. But I just like the way the Eagles match up in every other aspect outside the quarterback position against this team. Okay, what are the Falcons? They've turned into kind of a smash mouth, pound it kind of team, not getting Julio involved, not having Ryan sling the ball around. He didn't even throw for 200 yards in that game Saturday night. We didn't touch on that. He didn't even have 200 passing yards in that game. So this is the kind of the direction this team's moving in, Zach, is let's run the ball. We'll take our shots when they're there, not turn it over, and we'll try to win that way. And that's what they're doing. That's what they're having success with lately. However, the Eagles, Zach, boast the number one rushing defense in the league. They give up only 79 yards per game on the ground. That's fantastic. I mean, that's going to make it really difficult, I think, for Atlanta to come out and try to set the tone on the ground. And if the Eagles make you one-dimensional, it's going to be hard to win. And it's going to be, obviously, it's in Philly. This is going to only be in the last 8 games, Atlanta's only played 2 of them outside. It's going to be a little kind of rainy and dreary day. I think that, in turn, helps the Eagles. And look, I think the Eagles are going to be smart. I don't think they're going to put Foles in a situation where he's going to have to go out there and win the game for him. I think they're going to rely on Ajayi. They backed off of him the last week of the season, had the bye week to really kind of get him ready, and I think that goes to show you he didn't play that last game against Dallas. All the other running backs did. He didn't. I think that goes to show you he's going to be the guy, and I think I wouldn't be surprised if we see Jay Ajayi get 25, maybe 30 carries in this game, probably close to 20, 25, and then have Blunt be that closer at the end of the game. So I think Philly just matches up really well in this game. I think they win somewhere along the lines of 21-17, 2017, somewhere around there. I think it's going to be a low-scoring, drag-them-out game. It's not going to be easy by any means. But I'm going to take the Eagles in this game. It's not a homer pick at all. It's just I think they match up really good outside of, obviously, Nick Foles being the quarterback there. Every other aspect, I like the Eagles in this game. And they're underdogs. This is the first time the number one seed in the playoffs is an underdog. They're buying into that. Fletcher Cox has come out and said, look, we've been disrespected all year. We're 13-3. Our record speaks for itself. We'll go out and shut you guys up again. So they're obviously playing that up. They're playing the underdog roll up. We'll see what happens. But I like the Eagles to win a close one on Saturday.
And I think this is the ideal situation for the Eagles, getting to play this Falcons team. I don't think there could have been a better matchup for them to start off their first game of the playoffs. I'm very, very excited and looking forward to this.
So it sounds like you think it could kind of go either way.
I agree. I'm picking the Falcons because I got to pick one here. But I don't – it's tough for me. I think the Eagles are right there. I don't see the Falcons being far ahead of them. Right. Except at the quarterback position. And even there, I don't see them far ahead. I think Matt Ryan's he's been fine.
Right.
That's it. He's all right. I think Foles on a good day, that's exactly where he is. He's fine.
Yep. Completely agree.
So last game here, staying in the NFC, New Orleans at Minnesota Vikings. And this is one of the week 1 games that kicked off the season where Minnesota in a home game was able to win 29-19. So we've seen a little bit of a preview of this game, although it's hard to take much away from the first game of the season. There's a lot of things that have changed for both teams, including Vikings having a totally different quarterback at this point.
Right. Yeah.
So both of these teams – I've enjoyed watching this season. The Vikings have a great defense. They've got some very solid players. I like the combination with McKinnon and Murray at running back. They both give some different effects there. Murray kind of a short yardage guy, while McKinnon's more explosive. At receiver, Diggs and Thielen, both very talented. Rudolph, their tight end, has looked good throughout this season. He's very reliable. First downs, touchdowns. Wouldn't be surprised at all if he gets in the end zone this week. On the Saints side of the ball, again, I've loved watching them play. Their defense has improved from what it's been. I think this is a big Alvin Kamara day. I think he comes back after being shut down last week. I would not be surprised at all. Multiple touchdown game, even if it be like a two rushing touchdown, 1 receiving touchdown kind of game. I think this could potentially, even against a good defense there with Minnesota, I think he could have a very big day here. And I'm going to pick the Saints, even though they are the underdogs here.
All right, Zach's going with the visiting Saints to continue their playoff run. When I look at this game, if I was like you and my team wasn't in the playoffs, this is the game that I would be looking forward to most. I am really looking forward to this game, and I'm obviously hoping the Eagles win, and this is to determine who they'll play in the championship game. I hope that's the feeling I'm watching this game with. But if it's not, I'll have 24 hours to get over the loss. I'll still enjoy sitting down watching this game because I think it's going to be fantastic. You have Drew Brees, who obviously future Hall of Famer, and that offense, the way they've played all year, going up against the number 1 defense in football in Minnesota. And I think Minnesota matches up pretty well with this defense. You got Xavier Rhodes on the outside, who's a long, physical receiver. He matches up really well with those big physical receivers. And what is the Saints' number 1 receiver? Michael Thomas. He's a big, physical receiver. And I think Xavier Rhodes is going to take him out of the game. So in turn, to your point, I think the Saints are going to need Ingram and Kamara to have a big game, not combine for 45 yards like they did last week. If they combine for 45 yards this week, they'll lose by double digits. They need those two to step up and have a big game this week and take the pressure off of Drew Brees, because that defensive line, Everson Griffin and those boys up front, they'll get after the quarterback. And that secondary, with all those pieces they have on the back end, is really stifling. At home, I think it's going to be too much for the Saints. I think offensively, Minnesota will do enough. I think Keenum will just do what he's done all year and not lose the game for him. And I think Murray and Nixon, they'll get or McKinnon, excuse me, they'll get theirs. They'll kind of keep the game balanced there. And I think Minnesota wins the game. I think it's a close game. I do. I think it's another one of them games that goes down to the wire. And I wouldn't be surprised if it's a field goal one way or the other at the end that decides it. And I'll go with the home team. And I'm going to go with home field advantage. It's crazy to think I'm picking against Drew Brees here with the way he's been playing and the way their offense has been all year. But I'm going to go with the home team, and I'll take the Vikings to move on to the championship game.
Yeah, not a bad choice. Like I said, I expect it to be close as well. Like you said, I could 100% see it being within the field goal, someone winning right towards the end of the game.
These two,
it would be exciting to see.
The NFC has been so competitive all year. I mean, it's been so competitive. It would be hard to imagine these games not being close. Both of them. It would be really hard for me. It's almost impossible for me to see a situation where one of those four teams, Eagles, Falcons, Saints, or Minnesota, blows the other team out. I don't see it. I don't see it. I think both will go down to the wire. And this weekend is supposed to be the best weekend in football all year, the divisional round. Everyone says it. I hope it lives up to the hype. I think it will.
Yeah, I think the only chance of a blowout is if one of the teams comes out turning over the ball consistently.
Sure.
That's what's really going to separate things. Aside from that, I expect close games. I'm really excited heading into this upcoming week.
Yeah, you have to be. I mean, you really have to be. And this is what it's all about. You're getting into these playoff matchups and you're getting deeper into the season. And I mean, at the end of the day, there's only what, 8 teams left out of 32. This is what these guys, this is what they live for. This is what they hope to get to, and it's not guaranteed. That's the thing. I mean, like I said, I wanted you to listen to that Kirby Smart press conference. That's one of the things he says. He's like, he goes, I love the senior leadership on this team. They realize that, nothing's a given in the future. And he said, I hope the freshmen and sophomores feel that they have that same mindset to where it's not a guarantee that we're going to get back here. And that's kind of how – I mean, you look at a guy like Brent Selleck for the Eagles. I mean, that dude's been playing forever. I mean, his window's closing. I mean, he's going to have to retire soon. I mean, he can't play football forever. I mean, it's a perfect example. Guys like that, this might be their last opportunity to try to get that Super Bowl.
Thank you so much for listening to the Lifelong Rivals Sports Podcast. We really appreciate it. We've changed some things up based on some of the feedback we've received, so we'd love to continue hearing your feedback. As we continue to build this platform with our podcast, it's very helpful to us if you can share it with the people you know that you think would be interested. We'd really appreciate it. Thank you so much, and have a great week.